Nod, yes, if you can hear me. Nodding, good. All right. Welcome. We'll get the meeting started. I am Brenda Floyd. I'm Vice President for Finance and Administration. And I have with me today Dr. Robert Newman, our Provost, and Dr. Richard Nicholas, our Vice President of Student Life. And we're here to talk to you about some board agenda items that we're going to take forward at the February Board of Regents meeting. There are 6 items that deal with changes in tuition and fees. And we're going to go over those proposed changes with you and give you an opportunity to make comments or ask questions. We are, first and foremost and primarily, we are going to recommend an increase in board designated tuition. And I'm going to take just a moment to stop and talk about tuition with you. There are 2 types of tuition. When you see tuition on your bill, it's made up of 2 different types of tuition. The first is state tuition, and that amounts to $50 per semester credit hour. And it's been $50 per semester credit hour since about 2003, when that one was frozen. The other part of the tuition amount that you see is called board designated tuition. And that tuition is left to the Board of Regents to set within certain guidelines and certain limits. TWU currently, we have a document for you. This is a list, oops, let's move so fast. It's a 2-page list of all 38 public institutions of higher education in the state of Texas. And this chart shows you the cost for tuition and all mandatory fees, starting with the highest fee, going down, tuition fees, going down to the lowest tuition and fees for 30 semester credit hours for a full year in the state of Texas, the lowest being $4,146 for a year, the highest being $11,592 for the year. TWU is the 20th out of those 38 public institutions of higher education in the state of Texas. We are currently at the blue line. If you are taking 30 semester credit hours, you're paying $7,050 a year in tuition and mandatory fees. That does not include what are now the program fees and the instructional enhancement fees, because those vary from campus to campus, and they may or may not be similar. So this is a coordinating board report that is put out. You can see it on the coordinating board's website if you're interested. We are proposing to increase our current board designated tuition, which sits at $121.84 a semester credit hour. We're proposing to increase that by $8.36 per semester credit hour, for a total of $130.20 per semester credit hour. If the Board of Regents does approve that increase, we would remain within the statutory requirements. There is a statutory requirement out there that we cannot raise tuition and academic related fees any more than 3.95% a year, or a maximum of $280. For a student taking 30 semester credit hours in a year, you would see your total bill go up by $250.80. This moves TWU from the blue line to the pink line, and then we become number 19 out of 38 institutions in the state of Texas in terms of tuition and mandatory fees. If the Board of Regents passes this recommendation, it would be effective immediately. What that means to you is that it would take effect for your summer coursework, your Maymester coursework, and your summer coursework as well. The rationale for this increase is fourfold. Number one, we are already seeing what the bill patterns look like in Austin for this upcoming biennium. And basically, whether you go with the House Bill 1 or Senate Bill 1, our appropriation is relatively flat. We would receive no more than about $1 million a year in additional funds. If the Senate bill passes, no more than about $500,000 in additional funds if the House bill should pass. And it's likely to be somewhere in between in reality. We won't know that until the end of May. We have a number of needs that are very critical here at the institution. The first one being new faculty needs. And I'm going to ask Dr. Neely to speak to you about that for just a moment.
As most of you know, TWU has undergone remarkable growth, particularly over the last decade. Our head count is now about 15,000 students. If you look at credit hour production, in 2004 we were producing 226,000 credit hours, so all the hours students took. Today, we're producing more than 330,000 credit hours, so that's a 100,000 credit hour jump. The best data we have for instructional personnel goes back to 2007. In 2007, we had 450 FTE headcount for faculty. Today, we have 452. So you think about 100,000 credit hour jump, but only 2 individuals jump. We're starting to see increasing scrutiny from those bodies that oversee the university. For example, SACS, the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, is right now taking a look at TWU. We're in our reaffirmation of accreditation year, and they have asked us why we haven't put forward a plan to grow faculty. So we're going to put forward such a plan, and what I propose is to add 18 FTE, a new faculty line. Now you may wonder where did that 18 come from. Right now, 56% of our credit hour production is taught by tenured or tenure track faculty. The state average is 65%, slightly over 65%. So 18 FTE would bring us up to 60% of our credit hour production being taught by tenured track faculty. In addition to SAC's comments, even the co-board recently questioned the number of faculty we had as they review specific programs. So with this scrutiny, with the growth, we think it's time that we're going to have to add some faculty. And so we're proposing 18 FTE.
One of the other critical needs that we have here at TWU is to address compensation for both faculty and staff. Over the past 2 years, we have not raised salaries either based on market changes nor just base salary changes, cost of living changes. We have given one-time stipends each of the past 2 years, but no increases to base salary. What's happening to us in both staff and in faculty is that we are less competitive in the marketplace for new hires that we want to make. In some instances, we have simply not been able to, or it's taken us a very long time to fill a position because our salaries are not competitive. One of the other areas that we all realize as we go through our personal life, and as certainly we manage the university here, are cost increases. The costs continue to go up. For the university, that's particularly true in the area of software licenses. Once you're into these big, expensive software packages that we're all very dependent upon, there you are. And we see approximately 10% increases per year in these software costs. One good example is you all are familiar with Blackboard in your classroom studies. Blackboard has already notified the university that its cost will go up $100,000 next year. Now, if the increases go through and are approved by the Board of Regents, the projected revenue to be generated from those increases is $2.2 million a year. Well, let's talk about what that would pay for and how quickly that could be spent. Dr. Neary has told you that he's going to be proposing the hiring of new faculty, of which he's going to propose 6 new faculty next year. Those 6 new faculty would cost approximately $600,000, and that's an ongoing cost every year from the time that you bring them on. So that takes care of 600 of the $2 million, 600,000 of $2 million. The compensation, if we were to just deal with a 1% increase, and I'm not telling you that's the way we're going to distribute any increase in compensation. We currently have a compensation survey and study underway, and it's from that study that we will make some decisions about compensation for faculty and staff. But if you just look at what it costs for a 1% raise, that's in excess of $600,000, somewhere between $600,000 and $700,000. So we've moved on up and taken care of about 1.3 million out of that 2.2 million. So very quickly, you can see that we would spend those dollars. In addition, the cost increases are all ongoing. Reality is we may have to look at using any approved board designated tuition increase over a 2-year period. Should a bill pass that is out there right now that freezes tuition, we might be holding tuition fixed, and therefore Dr. Neely would not be able to hire 6 new faculty next year. We might have to look at that over a longer period of time. The same would hold true for compensation. Cost increases are very difficult. They're coming in, but regardless, as long as we purchase the services that are out there. So that's what it looks like in terms of our proposal for board designated tuition. I want to show you a couple of things before I leave this topic, and that is the average student taking 30 hours in the state of Texas, the average tuition and mandatory fees, that is $7,396 for a full year. TWU, should we increase, would still be just below that average amount. You may ask, where do we spend all that designated tuition money? Because we bring in about $40 million a year in board designated tuition. But it's divided into several categories and budgeted. The first and the largest being designated budgets. Almost every department has a budget account that is funded from designated tuition. And together those amount to about 73% of the $40 million. We are also required by state statute to set aside funds, a certain percentage, for undergraduate tuition scholarships and for graduate tuition scholarships. And together those make up in it about $4.5 million. Here you can see that. Debt retirement for our Dallas building costs us $1.5 million every year and is funded from board designated tuition. And then we spend a good deal of the designated tuition on additional scholarships, about 12% or nearly $5 million. So that's where the board designated tuition goes overall. And I just told you specifically where we would spend any increase in board designated tuition. All right, I'm going to stop right now, and I'm going to let you ask questions or make statements about the board designated tuition proposal before we move on to the additional 5 recommended changes to tuition and fees. We open up Houston and Dallas, I think. And Eric, can you hear me or are you muted? Okay, great. All right, any questions or comments relative to board designated tuition? Yes.
Where do you get your averages for these resident costs?
From this coordinating board's website. It's Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. And you'll find the average cost and the cost that I just showed you for tuition and mandatory fees. And you'll also find some additional charts out there that will include room and board and books and other things based upon financial aid numbers. But it's on the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board website. For those of you in Houston and Dallas, the question was, where do you find those average costs, or those specific costs for universities that I showed you? And it is on the Coordinating Board's website. Any other comments or questions?
Do you plan to increase financial aid?
I don't, that's not my area of responsibility. There are some changes in financial aid. Dr. Nicholas, would you like to speak to that?
And it might be easier when I come for the
Okay, we'll talk about that just a minute. The question was, do we plan on increasing financial aid? And Dr. Nicholas will speak to that in just a few minutes. Other comments or questions? Yes.
You said you will increase faculty members by 6, right?
Dr. Neely is proposing.
Yeah, over 4 years, 18 FTEs. So FTE is full-time equivalent. So by 18 faculty, we can't do that all at once. It's just too much money. So in the first year, 6, and then in the following 3 years, 4 faculty each year, and that's how you get to the 18.
How is this faculty going to affect
Well, basically, it'll help with our accreditation. It means that students will interact with permanent tenure track faculty and with adjuncts or graduate assistants in classes.
If you hold just 1 second. Houston and Dallas, you probably couldn't hear that, but the question had to do with the numbers of faculty that Dr. Neely is proposing. And he explained that he would be proposing 18 new faculty overall, but we do not have enough funds to do that in just 1 year. So that would be done over a four-year period. And the other part of the question was, how would that affect the quality of education at TWU? And basically, we must do something in order to meet the requirements of the SACS accreditation.
Do any of those count towards the system here in Denver? So I noticed that UNT students are allowed to write quickly as well as the state students.
Good question. No, it does not. If you check into UNT's fees, they have a very large transportation fee, and that provides for the services of the free bus, etc. TWU has a very small parking fee relative to other universities, less than $100 a year, and I think if you go across town, it's in the hundreds of dollars a year for that transportation fee. I don't have it off the top of my head, but we don't. And the bottom line to your question is, we don't have the kind of fees in place that would provide for those services. Any other questions? Okay, I'd like to move on then to differential tuition. And Dr. Neely will again speak to differential tuition.
For those of you that may not understand what differential tuition is, it's different than the designated tuition that Dr. Floyd has been talking about. Differential tuition means that certain programs have a bit more tuition because of the high cost of delivering those programs. So rather than spreading the cost out across all students, we're actually targeting those programs where we know costs are quite a bit higher. Differential tuition is not new at TWU. In fact, we right now have 3 programs that have differential tuition. Those programs are the dental hygiene program, the nursing program, and physical therapy. Also in Texas, differential tuition is actually quite normal. The UT system, the A&M system, in fact, some of the community college systems use differential tuition to address those high-cost programs. What I have proposed is that we add differential tuition to 5 new programs, and we increase the differential tuition in 2 of our programs. And part of this recommendation comes out of what we did this past semester with course fees. Many of you probably saw a change in your bill. We moved from course fees to program fees. A big part of that move was to eliminate entirely the distance education fees. Another part of that move was to simplify so that you paid the exact same program fee across all programs. And what that meant, though, is that some programs were left with the revenue shortage, and we have been modeling this for some time. The programs in which we have to offer differential tuition, one is the School of Management. The problem there, in fact, in most of these you'll see, is that these are online offerings where we have to hire a number of specialized personnel. So in the School of Management, we have a huge EMBA program. That's an online program, so we're proposing for master's students only in that program a $40 per credit hour fee. In the Department of Communication Sciences, the same sort of thing. They have a large online master's program for which we have to hire special personnel, and we're proposing there a $10 per credit hour differential tuition just for masters as well. In the School of Library and Information Studies, you're seeing a pattern, large online program where there were huge distance ed fees before. Now we're proposing $10 per credit hour for masters and doctoral students only. In the Department of Health Sciences, which is almost entirely online, we're proposing a $40 per credit hour tuition for all levels, undergrad through doctorate. Now there's one other program that doesn't fit this pattern of online, and that's actually the Department of Fashion and Textiles. And we're proposing there a $10 per credit hour differential tuition amount. And the reason this one is different is that this is a intensive program in terms of materials, in terms of equipment, in terms of labs, and in fact the department has adopted what they see as a student-friendly approach in which they centrally buy all of the materials that students will use. So all of the fabric, all the buttons, all the thread, all of that. So students don't have to go down to Joann Fabrics or wherever and buy it themselves. And this provides a cost savings to students since they don't have to go do it themselves. Buying centrally and buying in bulk is much cheaper for the students. So to cover that, because we took away the previous course fees, we're proposing that $10 per credit hour at the undergrad level differential tuition. The 2 programs that we've asked for an increase in, again, these are very expensive programs to offer. One is dental hygiene, the clinics, the dentists, etc. We're proposing moving from a $5 to a $20 per credit hour differential tuition. And then in nursing, which is in any school very expensive to offer with the labs, the simulations, the low faculty student ratios, moving from the current $25 per credit hour to $35 per credit hour. So that summarizes it. So again, let me indicate 5 new programs that would have differential tuition, but not at all student levels, like most of them are at the grad level, and the increases in 2 of the current differential assessments that are out there. Dr. Floyd, do you want me to answer any questions about differential tuition? Yeah.
The fashion and textiles department is only for undergrads?
That's my understanding, yes.
They don't have
Yeah, there's no graduate program at all. Yes?
How does the differential tuition for nursing affect the service courses? Is it charged by what their major is or by the prefix of the course that they take?
By the prefix. So
We don't get it.
No. What Dr. McIntyre is referring to is that she has to offer
A and B.
anatomy and physiology, probably 20-some sections now to pre-nursing students. I'm sorry, but that goes to the College of Nursing.
We have 4 more recommendations that we're making to the regents, and they are in the area of student life, and Dr. Nichols is going to talk about those.
Included in the fee area are several fees, most of which there is no change. There are 2 fee changes we are proposing to the Board of Regents at the next meeting, beginning with the union fee. We are proposing a $3 increase in the union fee. This is not per credit hour. The union fee is a flat fee paid by each student. And we are proposing to raise that fee by $3. That is primarily because of maintenance needs in the union building in Denton, and in particular, new requirements for the fire code and life safety code. Facilities in Dallas and Houston do not have that problem. The union building here was built in the 60s, and we have new code requirements we must meet, and they're rather expensive. The other fee where we're making a change or proposing a change to the board is the fitness and recreation fee. That building, which is new, the construction was a little bit less than we expected. The building has now been managed long enough to have a small reserve, so we're proposing to lower the fee by $2. That offsets most of the $3 for union fee. Again, this is a flat fee. It is not per credit hour. It would be a $2 reduction per student per semester. Shifting gears to the auxiliary units, we are proposing to the board a change in room and board rates for next year. Auxiliary units are those areas of the university that are required to be totally self-supporting. Housing receives no money from the state and no money from tuition. The entire budget for the housing operation must be met by those students who are living there. We're proposing an increase that averages just over 3%. There's a whole array of rates for different rooms and apartments and so forth, but the average increase will be 3%. That is necessitated by rising costs, insurance, utilities, maintenance, repairs. For the food service, we are proposing an increase across the board for meal plans of just over 2%. And that is almost entirely driven by rising food prices. If you've been to the grocery store lately, you know that things are more expensive, and it's no different when our food service buys food for students. We believe that both of those operations can continue to be break even with those small increases. And first, before I get to financial aid, is there a question about those 2 fees and the room and board? Okay, then quickly to turn to the question about financial aid. Do we plan to increase financial aid? The first answer is I would love to, but financial aid is based on federal rules and state rules. At this point, we do not have an indication of changes in financial aid. Very simply described, financial aid is designed to meet the difference between a student's and their family's ability to pay and the cost of the institution. That includes federal loans, Pell Grants, a number of small federal programs, and some state financial aid programs, most notably the Texas Grant. While we do the processing of your applications for financial aid, we are not permitted to make decisions about how these programs are operated. Most of you know there's a thing called need after the analysis of your financial aid application. It's a word I wish they wouldn't use because every student tells us they need more. But the bottom line is that's the number for eligibility, and the amount of dollars targeted at that need is set by the federal government and in part by the state government. We do expect some possible changes in state financial aid through this legislative session, but at this point we do not have an answer. At this point there have been no changes in the federal financial aid policy other than the change made last year eliminating the Pell Grant from summer school. There could still be changes in federal financial aid as this year goes on. So in answer to the question, I wish we could decide to increase financial aid, but it is not within any university's prerogative. We have been able to increase scholarships. There are scholarships that are need-based. Most scholarships are merit-based. We've been very fortunate in fundraising over the last 2 years and been able to add a substantial amount of money to the scholarship program. Some of you may have seen the publicity on the scholarship for nursing students. We received a 4-year federal grant for $3 million in nursing student scholarship. We continue to go after grants and to raise money for those programs. Any questions about that part of it?
Okay, that wraps up our presentation, unless there are other questions or comments that anyone would like to make.
The 4-year grant was $3 million for nursing student scholarships.
That the schools provide.
It's a federal grant given to us to give to students.
Okay.
Part of that is for graduate students, part for undergraduate students, but all of nursing.
All for the resident.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
The question asked was regarding the $3 million in nursing scholarships. Dr. Nicholas clarified that it is strictly for nursing students, and it is a federal grant to the university and then to nursing students specifically.
Just curious, the chart that you showed from the coordinating board, when you send in our numbers, you calculate in the differential tuition, is that correct?
No, that does not include differential tuition. It's only the designated and state tuition, because that's all across the board, not all students. It doesn't apply to all students. So those tuition fees, it wouldn't apply to program fees either, because it's dependent and it varies by university. Yes.
Do you plan to post this online?
This whole presentation will be online. I'm not, yeah.
It's, do you want me to?
Yes, go ahead.
It'll be on the Ustream, and it's going to be the TWU off-campus students, and you can watch this whole thing live again. So
Yes.
you can go to ustream.com, and you're going to type in TWU off-campus students, and you can see all our videos that we've recorded, and this is going to be one that's going to be on there.
Okay.
So, Ustream, yeah, .com.
Houston, Dallas, that was, if you want to see the presentation again, it is available, it will be available on ustream.com. What's this?
TWU off-campus students.
TWU off-campus students. Okay, we thank you very much for coming. Appreciate your time.